Good evening, guys. In the last session, we have seen some questions related to OOPS as well as exception handling. I have uploaded those documents also. Did you see? Did you see them? Yes, I uploaded in the portal. You can download those documents. Perfect. So, as of now, what are the topics we completed, guys? So, we completed Java introduction part, right? How to develop a Java program, how to compile the Java program. We completed. We discussed about data types. We discussed about variables. We discussed about array operators. Operators we completed. Then we discussed about control statements. Then after that we discussed about arrays and we discussed about strings. Then we discussed about command line arguments also. Command line arguments. If you want to supply any input for the main method, then you can go for command line argument. Then after that we discussed about classes, we discussed about objects, and we discussed in depth about variables, like what is non-static variable and what is static variable and what is local variable. Then we discussed about methods. When we are talking about methods, method parameters and method return types. Method parameters and method return types, they are very important. Then after we discussed about constructors. We discussed about constructor. Constructor is used to initialize instance variables of the class. Constructors we discussed, and we discussed about blocks, right? We are having instance block and static block. After that, we discussed about encapsulation, and we discussed about inheritance, polymorphism, and we discussed about method overloading. We discussed about method overloading, and we discussed about method overriding. We discussed about abstraction, interfaces and abstract classes, and we discussed about abstract classes, and we discussed about what is marker interface. We discussed about what is marker interface. Then after that, we discussed about variable arguments. What is the purpose of variable arguments? When you don't know how many parameters we need to take for a method, then we will go for variable argument. Then after that, we discussed about static keyword, and this keyword, super keyword, final keyword. This keyword, super keyword, and final keyword. What is the difference between this keyword and super keyword? This is used to represent current object. Super is used to refer parent object. We discussed about final keyword, constant variables, immutable classes, methods cannot override if you have a final keyword also we discussed. Then after we discussed about java.lang.object class and methods. Object class is a default parent class for all the classes in the Java. There are 11 methods available in the object class. Every object can access those methods. ToString method, hash code method, equals method, finalize method, clone method, get class method, and multi-threading methods also available. So ToString, it will print the object in the string format. When you don't like that implementation, then you can override that. You can override the ToString. You can override the equals method. So by default, equals method will compare address of the object. If you want to compare content of the object, then you need to override the equals method. Okay. Object class methods also we discussed, and we discussed about wrapper classes. What is the purpose of wrapper classes? What is the purpose of wrapper classes? When we want to represent primitive types in the form of objects, then we will go for wrapper class. For every primitive type, there is a respective wrapper class. And we discussed about typecasting. We discussed about typecasting. What is the meaning of typecasting? Converting the data from one format to another format is called typecasting. Widening is available, narrowing is available. Widening is called as upcasting, narrowing is called as downcasting. Converting from lower data type to higher data type is called as widening, that is called as upcasting. So at that time, specifying the data type is optional. But when we are converting from higher data type to lower data type, that is called narrowing. At that time you need to specify typecasting, data type you have to specify. And we discussed about packages. What is the purpose of packages? Grouping the classes, that is called package. In the Java there are already several packages available. If you want to use one package class in the another package, you need to use import. Our classes also we are going to bind to a package. We discussed about static import. What is the meaning of static import? What is the meaning of static import? If you use a static import, static members can be accessed without a class name. All right. After that, we discussed about exception handling. And here we discussed try, catch, finally, throw, throws, and throw keyword. Try block is used to keep the risky code. Catch block is used to catch the exception. When the problem occurred in the try block, control will go to catch block. If you want to execute some cleanup code, then we will go for finally. What is throws? If you want to ignore checked exceptions, then we can go for throws. If you want to create your own exception, then we will go for throw. And we discussed about checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions, exception hierarchy. What is the topmost exception? Throwable. From throwable, exception is available, error is available. Exceptions can be handled, errors cannot be handled. Exceptions are divided into two types: checked exceptions and unchecked exception. What is the difference between checked exception and unchecked exception? If the exception can be identified at the compile time, that is called checked exception. If the exception occurred directly in the runtime, that is called unchecked exception. Exception hierarchy. And we discussed about checked exceptions, and we discussed about unchecked exceptions. Checked exception and unchecked exceptions also we understood. Then what else we learnt? So in Java, so far we learnt these concepts: strings, string buffer, string, comma, string buffer, comma, string builder. We discussed about string buffer, and string builder. Java introduction, Java program execution flow, Java installation, path setup, compilation, execution, data types, variables, operators, control statements, arrays, string buffer, string builder, command line arguments. Here, oops started. Classes, objects, non-static variables, static variables, local variables, methods, method parameters, method return types, constructors, and constructor overloading, blocks, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, method overloading, method overriding, abstraction, interfaces, abstract classes, marker interfaces, variable arguments, static keyword, this keyword, super keyword, final keyword, java.lang.object class and object class methods we discussed, wrapper classes, typecasting, packages, static import, exception handling, try catch finally throws and throw keyword, exceptions hierarchy, what is the root exception and what are the child exceptions, exception hierarchy we discussed, and checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. These are the topics that we have discussed so far. Methods, yeah, that's fine. Static methods and instance method, and we discussed about static control flow and instance control flow. How the static is going to execute, how instance is going to execute. We discussed about static control flow and instance control flow. Perfect. Now, other main important areas that we need to discuss. First one is file handling. How to deal with the files. How to deal with the files. This is one important area. Then how to work with multi-threading. How to work with multi-threading. Another important part is collections. These three are main three important topics that we need to learn. After these three topics, then small topics available like generics available, inner classes available, generics available, inner classes available, reflection API is available, reflection API and garbage collection. After this, Java 1.8 features are available. Okay, so these are the other important areas that we need to learn. File handling, multi-threading, collections, generics, inner classes, reflection API, garbage collection, and Java 1.8 features. So once we complete these topics, then we are eligible for advanced Java. All right, fine. Look at this. File handling, multi-threading, collections, generics, inner classes, reflection API, garbage collection, 1.8 features. Fine. Let's get started. So today we are going to start with file handling. Yes. Yep. Serialization comes under file handling only. File handling with the serialization and deserialization. So today we are going to start with file handling. We are going to start with file handling. File handling is very important in every programming language. Okay, file handling very important area in every programming language. When we are developing one application, your application may want to read the data from the file, may want to update the data in the file, may want to write the data to the file. File operations are very common in every project. File handling is very important area in every programming language. Below are the common file operations. Below are the common file operations. Create a file, write the data to the file, write the data to file, read the data from the file, read the data from file. Okay, delete the file or update the data available in the file, like this. These are very common operations that we need to perform. File operations are very important in every programming language. Your project will use some configuration files. Every project will use some configuration files. So it's very important in every programming language. Below are the common file operations. Create a file, write the data to the file, read the data from the file, and delete the file. These are common operations. To perform file operations, Java language provided one predefined class. Java language provided one predefined class, java.io.file. So there is a predefined class available in the Java. The class name is file class. That file class is available in java.io. File operations are also called as input and output operations. IO package is available, right? So java.io package contains set of classes and interfaces to perform input and output operations. Got it? Java.io package contains set of classes and interfaces to perform input and output operations. File handling is one of the input and output operation. Read the data from the file or write the data to the file. So to perform file operations, Java provided one predefined class. That class name is file. That file class is available in java.io package. Okay. Now here file f is equal to new file string name. Okay. By using this file class, you can create a file by using file class. File f is equal to new file string name. File f is equal to new file string of name. So with which name you want to create the file, that name you can pass as a parameter for file class constructor. Can I call it as a file class constructor? Can I call it as a file class constructor? Yes. File is a predefined class which is available in java.io package. Now, file f is equal to new file. We know that file is a class, f is a variable, new is a keyword, new file. Can I call it as parameterized constructor? Yes. What is the parameter we are passing? Name we are passing as a parameter. File class having several methods. File class is having several methods. Let us see what are those methods available in file class. JSC API. Open that API. Go to java.io package. Java.io package. Go to a class called file class. Okay. File class